What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking the top 5 running back steals for the 2024 fantasy football season. Basically, these are all guys outside of the top 20 running backs that have league-winning upside. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree? Who else would you put on this list and why, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's kick it off. As you can see, we have got our 2024 running back rankings here pulled up via fantasypros as of mid-August. PPR scoring format, keep that in mind. But with that being said, let's dive right into it. We said outside of the top 20 running backs, and we kick it off here at number 21 with David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. Now, it's not my intention to just give you the top 5 guys immediately from 21 to 25, but I do think we have to mention Montgomery here as one of these names because the upside is absolutely insane. You could argue it is the highest out of any of the names that we are going to be mentioning. But let's break down why that is. So with Montgomery, the elephant in the room, let's start there. It's Zamir Gibbs. It is the sophomore guy that a lot of people are really high on, especially in PPR scoring, that's being drafted at the end of the first or start of the second, depending on the size of your leagues. And hand up, I'm somebody that has said that I believe in Zamir Gibbs, that I think that he can be a top 5 running back. But I've never said that David Montgomery also isn't a tremendous value, because let's look at all aspects of this. The Detroit Lions, offensively, they haven't taken a step back. We should be expecting kind of similar things from them compared to last year, where offensively, they were a really, really strong team. There's going to be a lot of scoring opportunities, a lot of touchdown opportunities. Basically, David Montgomery can still eat. And sure, maybe Zamir Gibbs will get a few more opportunities, but it's not going to be an extreme shift where it's, like 10, 15% more compared to last year now. It'll be like maybe 3, 4%, something like that. And Montgomery is still going to be involved, especially in the goal line. He's a little bit more physical being utilized there. And while Zamir Gibbs is an excellent pass catcher and is the preferred guy in that category, Montgomery is also somebody that's a good dual threat running back, proved it in his days with the Chicago Bears, proved it last year when Zamir Gibbs wasn't available. And, in that scenario, David Montgomery becomes a top 12 running back, no questions asked, just like that if Gibbs is not on the field for an extended period of time. And speaking of the health of Zamir Gibbs, another point here. Just yesterday, Zamir Gibbs comes down with a hamstring injury. Now, while it's not projected to be severe, it is something worth monitoring. And maybe the Lions are a little bit more careful with him at the start of the season, and Montgomery gets a few more opportunities. So from that perspective, again, if something happens to Zamir Gibbs, Montgomery is going to be one of the biggest steals in this year's draft. And honestly, just like last year, Montgomery was probably the better value out of the 2 running backs. That's the case again this year, too, because Montgomery is the 21st overall running back compared to Gibbs, who's either like 4 or 5. You're still getting probably double-digit points on a week-to-week basis with a much higher ceiling than that in certain situations. So Montgomery going, 6th round, something like that, that's something that you really, really have to pay attention to. And I think he has standalone value. Hell, he proved it last year. Even without injuries, Montgomery was still valuable. So I think we have to start out here with Montgomery because of what we've seen him do, because what we know he can be capable of, and just because of the offense that he finds himself on. So let's continue on forward with the number 2 name on our list. That is Zamir White of the Las Vegas Raiders. So look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Zamir White comes in here at number 23. He is a very controversial name. I think part of the reason here is because he reminds so many people of one Alexander Mattison from last year, right? If you look at the scenarios, Alexander Mattison was the backup. Dalvin Cook was there for a really long time. He leaves. Mattison, we had seen him in spells when Dalvin Cook wasn't available, be the RB1 for the Vikings and get the job done, put up pretty significant fantasy numbers. but we hadn't seen it for a full season. Now, again, a lot of people got burned by Alexander Mattison. He had a couple decent games, but honestly, very disappointing. And now, similar situation with Zamir White, no more Josh Jacobs. We saw him in some limited opportunities last year at the end of the season, really show out, be given the volume, and do something with it. And so now, can we go ahead and extrapolate a full season of that type of production? Now, I'm not here to tell you that 100% Zamir White will end up being, Alexander Mattison 2.0, or he's going to end up being like Josh Jacobs 2.0. It's all in the realm of possibility. But what I can't ignore, again, he's going as number 23 overall running back. He is the unquestioned number one running back on that team. So you're getting a starting running back here. Like, compared to some of these other names, right? Montgomery technically is the 1B to the 1A of Jahmyr Gibbs, or, he's not really a handcuff, but it's one of those situations. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, split backfield. Raheem Mostert, split backfield. Tony Pollard, split backfield. Brian Robinson, he's got Austin Eckler there now. So a lot of situations where you've got other competition that's proven, not with Zamir White. Also, the offense should be better here. At least I'm praying that the Raiders make the right choice and elect Gardner Minshew to be their starting quarterback. Now, if they don't do that, then okay, maybe you back away from Zamir White a little bit, but we saw what Minshew did for the Colts offense last year. He opened things up through the air, which in turn opened things up on the ground. I think he can do the same here for the Raiders. The Raiders, they don't have, a bona fide stud at the quarterback position, so they will want to run the ball and take away pressure from the quarterback in that way. And they're going to force feed Zamir White. We saw it last year, especially when the coaching changes, were kind of being finalized and being set in stone with Pierce. So I think the opportunity is there for Zamir White. I wouldn't draft him as my RB1 or something like that. But again, him and David Montgomery, I think, are probably the number one and number two highest upside names out of all the guys that we're going to mention. Now, to be fair, the floor for Zamir White is lower. We don't have all of that statistical evidence from several years prior to say, okay, well, worst case scenario, this is what we're going to get. But I still think with Zamir White, you take the opportunity, you take a bona fide starting running back in this range of selections, like in the 6th round, around there. And, you hope that the upside can get it done. And either way, like at the end of the day, again, starting running back, which is so valuable at this point in time. Next up, let's move on to one Zack Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been bringing up Zack Moss here a lot throughout fantasy drafts, throughout other breakdowns. So Zack Moss, and funny enough, Chase Brown, the other Cincinnati Bengal running back, is right underneath him. Right now, both these guys are kind of competing to take over the Joe Mixon role for the Bengals after Mixon left for the Houston Texans. And look, Joe Mixon is coming off a top 5 fantasy performance, which I feel like not a lot of people realize. But Joe Burrow is also back offensively. That's going to open things up for everybody. You got a decent offensive line there. The biggest question is, will one of these guys kind of, distance themselves and become the number one guy, or is it going to be a rotation 50-50 split? I've said this before. I'm in the camp of Zack Moss. I think he's the better pass protector, which I think counts for something. He's also coming off a really strong season. The Bengals specifically only prioritized him in free agency. They got Zack Moss, and they're like, all right, that's enough. We're not adding anyone else. We're not drafting anyone else, like a younger rookie type of option. Zack Moss can also catch the football. He filled in very admirably for Jonathan Taylor last year and the Colts. So I think he can do it again. Now, okay, if you want to say that it should be Chase Brown instead of Zack Moss, fine. Maybe here we say Zack Moss / Chase Brown, and then you go ahead and choose one of these guys. But I just wanted to put it on record that us in particular, we have Zack Moss as the preferred guy. Maybe Chase Brown is that handcuff. Maybe he's that backup. or maybe it takes an injury for one of these guys to end up being the number one guy, the unquestioned starter all season long. But I do think that Zack Moss will get that opportunity to kick off the season. And again, unless there's an injury or something like that, I think Zack Moss remains the starter. I think he's the slightly better overall running back, more experienced. That also has something to do with it. So for me, Zack Moss has to be mentioned in this list. Next up, let's go with Jonathon Brooks of the Carolina Panthers. Now, he was somebody that was kind of a little bit higher at one point in time, now has gone down 35th overall in terms of running backs. I think this is probably right around his range. You could argue maybe a little bit higher, but before, when you saw people drafting him in like the 5th round, like that was overkill, because what people didn't realize, and what I've been saying for a while, is with Jonathon Brooks, look, you're buying Jonathon Brooks for end of season production. He will start off the year probably on the PUP list, and it's going to be Chuba Hubbard yet again for the Carolina Panthers during that point in time. Now, I actually think that Chuba Hubbard is somebody that not enough people are talking about, but he doesn't have the same type of upside as Jonathon Brooks and the same type of draft capital. So we're highlighting Jonathon Brooks in this scenario. Now, other factors here with the Carolina backfield, it's a crowded backfield, right? Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, even though he was super disappointing last year, and Jonathon Brooks. Even when Jonathon Brooks returns, it's going to take some time for him to become the number one guy like the Panthers are probably hoping for him to be. He's coming off a serious injury from college, right? ACL type of situation. So I think it's probably going to be at least until the midpoint of the year until Jonathon Brooks is either, kind of on the sidelines, not playing, or slowly gearing up. But honestly, what you're hoping for here with Jonathon Brooks, you're looking at the draft profile, you're looking at the college production, you're looking at the opportunities at the running back position for Carolina. They've upgraded the offensive line big time compared to last year, especially in the interior. That's going to open up holes in the middle for that rushing attack. But honestly, I think even if you draft Jonathon Brooks like in the 7th, 8th round, and you only get like 5 really solid games from him, you'll still be happy, because more than likely those 5 really solid games are going to come at the end of the season, and they're going to come right in time for your fantasy football playoffs. So to me here, this is more of a long-term type of draft, and it's not going to be until probably 2025 where we see Jonathon Brooks being unleashed, like a lot of people anticipate, for the entirety, for the majority of the season. Right now, my advice to you, if you draft Jonathon Brooks, okay, no issues. Just in a couple of rounds afterwards, make sure to grab Chuba Hubbard, because then you're probably going to have that Carolina backfield locked up. I don't think Miles Sanders is going to do anything all that special here unless he's forced to due to injury. So Jonathon Brooks, my favorite rookie running back, but you just have to be patient with him. But I do still believe he is worth a selection. And then finally, last name I want to mention here, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. Look, I love Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was my guy last year. But then, wouldn't you know it, like pretty much right as the season kicked off, he absolutely destroys his knee, and that's all she wrote. Then Jerome Ford became the guy for the Cleveland Browns. So, he has the experience. He knows this team. He's got the proven production. And I don't think it's going to be a situation where Nick Chubb is going to be ready immediately out of the gate week 1. So I think we could see a real scenario that Jerome Ford is the starting running back for the Cleveland Browns for a longer period of time than a lot of people are willing to admit. And even if Nick Chubb does come back sooner than expected, guys, he's not going to be at 100%. He absolutely destroyed that knee. And I think that the Browns are going to be careful with how much volume they give him. And it's going to be Jerome Ford still being involved. So I really like Jerome Ford. I would be drafting Jerome Ford ahead of Nick Chubb. And again, unless we hear something here within the next couple of weeks, within the next month, around surrounding Nick Chubb's health in particular and how he's ahead of progress, all these things, I'm going to still have the rankings this way. I think that Jerome Ford is going to play the majority of the year. He's in an offense that has a lot of weapons, a lot of capabilities, good offensive line. They're going to want to run the football just like last year. That's their MO. And unfortunately, this one is because of injuries. Jerome Ford, I think, ends up being a higher fantasy producer than Nick Chubb when it's all said and done at the end of 2024. And right now, I think he's being drafted way, way too low. I think, out of all these names, like in this tier 6 list, like Zeke, Gus Edwards, Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Corum, Gibson, he is one of the guys that is going to start out as the starter and could be the starter for the entirety of the year, proven production. So I really, really like Jerome Ford. But with that, we wrap up our breakdown of the top 5 running back steals that are league winners for the 2024 fantasy football season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, agree, disagree, along with any other names you'd add to this list and why. Along with any other questions you guys might have, we'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.